All right, today's lesson is going to be solving multi-step equations. So we're going to be putting together everything that you've learned in this whole unit in order to solve these equations. Remember, solving an equation is a balancing act. Think of the scale, a balanced scale. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So that's one reason why we kind of find the equal sign and put a little dash line or a line straight down the equal sign so that we know that we're doing the same mathematical operations on both sides. All right, here are your steps for solving. Should be part of a review. Simplify one or both sides of the equation if needed. And so what you're going to find today is we might have to combine like terms or perform the distributive property or both. Use the inverse operations to isolate the variable. So remember, we learned how to undo addition subtraction first, then we learned how to undo multiplication division. That's opposite of our order of operation, but that's going to make the problem the easiest to complete the right way. So when we normally do order of operations, we do parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division in one step, adding and subtracting in one step. When we solve an equation, we will do the adding and subtracting first. Doesn't matter which order, it just matters that we get rid of the constant on one side with the variable term. Then we could do the dividing or multiplying depending on what's happening if there is that step needed. So let's take a look at some of these. So you have your original equation. I see that x is being multiplied to a fraction, 1/3. It's the same thing as being divided by 3. We're going to be adding 6, and that should equal -8. So the first thing we need to undo is we have to get rid of the adding 6. We do the inverse operation of adding 6, which is subtracting 6 on both sides. And remember, we said both sides. You could draw a straight line down that equal sign so that you know, especially when you have more than one term. Okay, so that goes to 0. Always check the math of the addition subtraction. That with these negatives sometimes, especially if it's not after the operation, if it's like a -6 plus a number or something like that, I see kids trying to subtract on both sides. So make sure that you are checking to make sure that +6 plus -6 equals 0, that they are additive inverses of each other. Then we complete the math on the right-hand side. So -8 minus 6 is the same thing as -8 plus -6, so we get a -14. Bring down that equals, and you have your 1/3 of x. This next step, couple things, right? Since 1/3 times x, you could be dividing by 1/3. I know this was something that kind of was a little bit tricky in the last assignment that we did when we did two-step equations. Dividing by 1/3 would undo multiplying by 1/3. So let's see what that looks like. It looks crazy to have a fraction divided by a fraction. But what does division mean? 1/3 divided by 1/3 can be solved by taking 1/3 times 3/1. So something else that we could do, and I'm going to change colors here so you can see the difference. Something else we could do is, instead of dividing by 1/3, since we know that the solution to this problem, okay, is multiplication by the reciprocal, we could multiply both sides by the reciprocal. Just kind of take out the whole step of showing that we're dividing by it. So that means we multiply this side by the reciprocal. So we'll get x by itself. We'll get then 14 times 3 is a -42. And we can check our work by substituting that back in. So when I check my work, I would do, what is 1/3 of a -42? I will add 6 to that. So basically it's dividing by 3 and then plus 6, and I get -8. It's supposed to equal -8, and I know that I've done it right. This just goes through. All right, sometimes we have to combine like terms first. So your original equation, if I look at the equal sign, where is it? There's a lot going on here, okay? So on the left-hand side of the equal sign, I have two terms with an x, and that means I want to simplify that first. So I have 7x plus negative 3x. Different signs mean I'm going to subtract, but it'll be positive. A positive 4x minus 8 is equal to 24. Now I have a two-step equation. So in the first step, I will be undoing this subtraction using the inverse of addition. Okay, make sure this goes to 0, and it does, additive inverses. Bring down my 4x, and that is equal to 32. Now I'm solving the second step by undoing this multiplication with division, always using my inverse operations. And finally, I'm checking my work. And again, it's important to check in the original problem, because if we somehow made a mistake in our simplifying like terms, we would catch it here. So we would do the math, so 56 minus 24 minus 8 should equal 24. 56 minus 24 is 32. I think this is going to work. And when we do this, we get 24. And we've checked our work. Okay, sometimes we need to use distributive property. So you have your original equation. We see that we have 5x plus 3 and then the quantity x plus 4 in parentheses. So again, locate, especially with these multi-step. I really want to see you drawing that line so you know where both sides of the equation are. First thing we have to do is we have to distribute, and because the 3 is after a plus sign, it's a positive 3. So we are distributing a positive 3. So when you work on a multi-step equation, you want to first get rid of the distributive property or the parentheses before combining like terms. So I can bring down and simplify this expression. So the positive 3 times x is a positive 3x. Positive 3 times a positive 4 is a positive 12. And that equals 28. Now I look for my like terms. The 5x and the 3x, the same variable term, can be combined into 8x plus 12, and that all equals 28. First step to undo is the additive inverse, or undo this addition. Okay. Last step to undo is going to be dividing both sides by 8 to get x is equal to 2. And then I check my work. And in this case, we can go ahead and do our regular order of operations here first. So we'll simplify this to 5 times 2, which is 10, plus then we have 3 times 6, which is 18, to equal 28. So checking it becomes quite easily because we can do some of those mental math operations using order of operations to get our work. All right. Something to be aware of. Sometimes we have a negative. So remember, in this problem, I look at clearing the parentheses. I'm going to distribute that 3, but look at that 3. It's after subtraction, which is plus a negative 3. So I have to distribute the negative 3, or I will make some mathematical errors. So if I distribute the negative 3, notice that here I'm distributing it to and negative 2. So bring down, here's my line for both sides of the equation. I'm simplifying the left-hand side. Negative 3 times x is a negative 3x. Negative 3 times a negative 2, however, is a positive 6. So my first step in solving is to actually simplify. Let's simplify. All right, so we have a 4 plus a negative 3, which simply leaves us with an x. And then we want to use the additive inverse. To be 15. And then substitute it back in to check our work. So 4 times 15 minus 3. So 15 minus 2 is 13 times 3. So 60 minus 39 should equal 21. And it does. And we know that we've done our work right. If, however, you find a mistake, you'll need to go back, check your distributive property, check that you used the negatives correctly. And let's just fix things, because I didn't create this PowerPoint. If I did, this would be correct. So, actually, let's take it one step further. Ta-da! Much better. So if we check our work, we would find that x is truly equal to 15. All right, we talked about multiplying by a reciprocal. That must mean there's a fraction. So let's take a look at the problem. In this problem, we could, and you might see problems like this. We know we want to get rid of parentheses, and on the right-hand side we have a negative 6/5. We could divide both sides by a negative 6/5, but we know that dividing by negative 6/5 is the same as multiplying by a negative 5/6. So if we first multiply both sides, let me get a color here that'll show up, multiply both sides by a negative 5/6. The 5's will cancel, the 6's will cancel, and we must multiply by a negative 5/6. Now before I multiply here, I can simplify. So I will get a negative 55 is equal to, and now there's no need for parentheses. And then I will undo. Make sure you're keeping your equal sign here so that we know we have to subtract 3 from both sides, additive inverse, and that becomes a negative 58. So, I would go back to my original problem to check my work. 66 will be equal to negative 6/5 times a negative 58 plus 3 So 66 equals a negative 6/5 times a negative 55. And now we can do some cross-canceling. Which equals negative 6 times negative 11 equals positive 66. And we know that we've done it right. So I want you to practice on these. And what I want you to do is pick one or more problems to do. Then we're going to take some time and we're going to work them out on the board. So go ahead and give these a shot, practice them, and then make sure that when you're taking good notes that you do go back and write the correct answer so you have even more problems to practice on your own.